Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Path. It's Dara here today, and we got Jack on board. Jack, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
And we are going to be talking about the Leeds GT that we were both attending a week or so ago. So tune in for that. That's coming up next. Okay, so Jack, what's up? We had quite a weekend last weekend by the time we're recording this.
Yeah,
Just about recovered from it, I think. Just about. But yeah, we had
yeah.
a lot of fun. So for everyone who doesn't know, myself and Jack, we were at the Leeds Grand tournament, even though it was actually a major, but that's just how it was named. So we were there bringing our world leaders, having a good time. And for everyone who doesn't know, I went 2-3 with my list. So nobody cares about that because I suck at the game. But Jack here went 4-1, which is incredibly interesting with his world leader list, which, in my opinion, is an exceptionally well optimized and well built list, having been on the receiving end of it myself. So, Jack, why don't you introduce yourself, introduce the list, blah, 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 all the good stuff. Tell us about how you found Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Jack. I have been on a few times. I've played competitive World Eaters since the start of ninth-ish, but not much before then. Yeah, Leeds was an experience. It's a 5 hour drive in the middle of a heat wave, 35 degrees Celsius. It's good fun. Um, the the game on Friday at Warhammer World was pretty funny for many reasons.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the Fire Frenzy Hellbrute
Yeah, why don't you
sniped my
tell
Demon
everyone about
Prince.
what happened with that? Yeah, that was pretty good. So we
So
we played we I went to Warhammer World with Jack on Friday. And we played a game in the middle of this heat wave at the end of the day when we both had very difficult days of travel. Um, so we were both pretty tired. And we
yeah,
rocked up for a game at Warhammer World
yeah.
because why not? But what happened during that game, Jack? Some crazy, crazy things went down.
Uh, so we had agreed beforehand that my Demon Prince was going to challenge your Demon Prince to an honor duel. We both did skulls and we both picked each other's Demon Princes. And then in turn two, I think, um,
Something like that, yeah.
my Demon Prince, I was getting quite aggressive with it and decided to send him into a Master of Executions and a Hellbrute, fairly confident that he would be able to kill both. Um, I put a little bit of incidental shooting into the Hellbrute because I started to doubt myself. I took one wound off the Hellbrute, and Dara was like, I'm going to fire Frenzy with the multi melter. And I was like, that's probably fine. He's got 4 up inbound against shooting. So I saved one of the 2 wounds. And then it was like, it's still probably fine. He would need to roll a 6 on the damage to kill him outright. Lo and behold, Dara rolls a 6 on the damage and snipes my Demon Prince, only scoring 5 on skulls. Um,
It's easy, guys. Just roll sixes. It's pretty simple.
I did have my revenge later in the
Yes.
game when my crown, my Noxlith crown, plinked some wounds off the Demon Prince shooting, off Dara's Demon Prince, sorry, shooting, which was funny in itself because no one realizes it has a gun. And then he was finished off by an exploding Vindicator. He had charged and weathered Overwatch and then swung to kill it. It then exploded, did one mortal wound, which Dara failed to shrug, which was pretty perfect for the game.
Yep, it was an excellent way for him to go down, for both of them to go down. I think just ignoble demises on both ends.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a really fun game. Jack, not wanting to miss words, kicked the ever loving shit out of my list
It was
with a bad.
only it was only
Um,
74-48, I think. It wasn't that bad.
yeah, it was pretty rough.
I mean, Abaddon. So a fairly crucial point in the game, Abaddon faced up to a Demon Prince, Dark Apostle, and 8 Red Butchers, and through illusory supplication killed 6 Red Butchers, which
Yeah,
was
it
kind
was
of
it was pretty
disgusting.
good. Yeah, I mean, I
um,
I learned in that moment. I was like, damn, I respect Abaddon now a lot. I mean, I respected him before. I realized that he's very good and stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, when he
I,
went into those Red Butchers and picked so many of them up, I was just like,
it
okay,
was it was a very spiky roll. He shouldn't have killed 6 through illusory with no
yeah.
rerolls or anything.
Well,
He shouldn't have killed that many.
lots of things happened out of the game that shouldn't have, right? I shouldn't have fire frenzied your Demon Prince to death, but it happened. It was a fun
Yeah,
game, and
very
Jack
fun game.
proves that he is the best World Leaders player in the world, having beaten the former best World Leaders player in the world, myself, of course, taking me out in style. And yeah, then we headed down to Leeds that night. We got in pretty late, and we were both pretty tired.
Yeah.
So yeah, then the tournament
Yeah.
began. So 5 games. How did you find the event overall, Jack? Did you enjoy it? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, in general, yeah, I had a really good time. Going with someone is not something that I often do. So going with someone and having someone to like talk through matchups and stuff like that between games was really useful. Like just bouncing secondary ideas off someone was like, yeah, it's it's something that I do, but I always feel like I'm being annoying with people if I'm like wandering around talking to like former opponents and stuff to say like,
Yeah,
oh, I've got
okay.
this. Should I take this, and this against them? But like having someone to like bounce ideas off of and to help as well, right? Because we bounce ideas off each other, and it's just good
Absolutely.
fun to like because you can like live vicariously through other players and get like more Warhammer basically, which is
Yeah,
great.
for sure. I mean,
Um,
it's really handy when we both played World Leaders as well, right? So it made
yeah,
idea bouncing that little bit better. And there's a lot to be said about going to an event with someone if you can, or meeting someone there, because we
yeah,
met some other people there as well, just from the channel and from thereabouts. But like, there's so much to be said for having someone to go to if a game doesn't go well. That like it's kind of like a consolation thing, as you were
yeah,
doing a lot of the time for me. And then like you said, bouncing ideas, picking secondaries. Like when you were playing into Thousand Suns, I was like, oh, I've played Thousand Suns a lot. I know what to do, blah
yeah,
blah blah. And like, it's really really useful, especially if you're both playing World Leaders, right?
yeah,
So I think that part of it, yeah, like I'll speak on that front as well. That like it really helped me get through the tournament too, because just having something to bounce to immediately after game, rather than like going outside and sitting down and
still
just
being
staring
hot.
into infinity.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and I think the other thing is like rocking up. Was it your first game on the Sunday? I think rocking up as your turn three was starting into the guard army, and you just like I stuck around for that combat phase, and you killed like 3/4 of his army. And it was like, yeah, picked a good moment to turn up.
yep, yeah. Turn 3 is big, especially into
Yeah,
Imperial Guard.
like seeing that happen again. It's just like living vicariously through someone else. It's just really good fun. Like, yeah,
On the flip side of
it's
that,
great.
you saw my
I did see
tiny
the nids.
smooth
Yeah, I
brain
did
moment.
see the nids.
Yeah, yeah.
The nids. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, so Jack watched me throw my first game in a big way. Just a really simple move I could have done, like move an upset guy here, move a non-upset guy there. And instead I decided to mix it up and do it the other way around, which didn't make any sense. And kind of like as soon as I moved them, I was like, me dumb. And then like after the game, right, you were like, oh, like just, don't want to say
Yeah.
anything. But I saw this thing that you could have done. I was like, I'll stop you right there, Jack. I know exactly what you're gonna say because I am an idiot.
Yeah.
But yeah, enough about that. Like, so yeah, you had a good time overall, right? It was good
Yes.
fun.
Yeah. It was.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Four very good games, very fun games. The last one was a bit dicey, but I'll get onto that later
Yeah,
when
we'll get there. But
talk
yeah,
through a bit. But
4 good
yeah,
games is good,
and,
right?
and with four really good opponents. And I like the Saturday night we went out for beers with Aground from the Discord, Alistair and his mate Ben, who ended up being my first game in the end.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That was fun.
because I was anticipating going into Deathwatch and had visions of Abaddon wading through 3 Redemptors, which would have been hilarious for me. And then we turned up, and I think it was literally as we were walking into the hall, I checked again because I was looking for my table, and it was like, oh, I'm into someone different. I'm playing Iron Warriors now. And I have played the new Codex quite a lot, actually, as opponents, which is good because it helps with list design, like seeing what works for other legions and what doesn't, and what might work for us and stuff like that. We played on Abandoned Sanctuaries, which is the no pre-game move one, where the objectives are like one at top, one at the bottom, one on each flank, and one in the middle.
Yes, yeah, believe
And
that's
then
it.
it's to hold the middle one, but no pre-game moves, which is not great. I've found I'm using Apoplectic Frenzy less nowadays, but yeah.
Yep, I find the same thing.
So it was a very vehicle-heavy Iron Warriors list. There were 2 Land Raiders and a Vindicator, a Venom Crawler, a Mauler Fiend, a Disco Lord, and a Warpsmith. And then the Disco Lord had like a Waller trait that basically meant that both Land Raiders could hit on twos shooting, and then you could put the Mauler Fiend hitting on twos in combat as well. Which is like I like the I like the way that works. His deployment was a bit not great. So like the Leeds GT terrain has that big L that was in the corner, and he kind of like shoved everything behind that to hide from the two Vindicators that I had, and ended up sort of blocking himself off a bit. Like the cultists rolled low on advances early on, and it meant that stuff got a bit like traffic jammed in.
It's always the problem though when you bring a list with that many large base moving vehicles. Sure. You tend to get caught in these traffic jams, especially in the city. Like the boards for the UKTC, they're pretty heavy on terrain, I would say, in general, right? So you can get kited really early if you bring such a list, that relies on like things like a Mauler Fiend and a Venom Crawler getting out. If the terrain doesn't show up, you're kind of screwed.
I definitely found that when I was running the Triple Vindicator Lord of Skulls with also extra Rhinos list, that was unpacking my deployment zone was like 2 turns. But so I took the Long War just because I always like taking the Long War. I may not max it that often, but I always tend to score fairly well on it. R&D, because you'd got in my head about taking R&D a bit more, because I've realised I just don't take it anymore.
Let's go R&D for the win.
And then Skulls, just because I am determined to make Skulls work. And I was really hoping to go second, so that he'd have to move forwards onto objectives. Because of the no pre-game move, I couldn't be too aggro too early. So I was hoping he'd move forwards a bit and give me some first turn charges. I obviously went first, so the plan worked.
What can you do?
So my turn one, I just played really cagey. I hid everything except the Vindicators, and then had to pray that, and tried to make it so that he could only really shoot one, while still being in the Crown's aura. So it had a 4-up invuln, and then I could just pop smoke for -1 to hit as well, to make it a little bit harder to shift. That was the theory. Obviously, I did all that, and then the first Land Raider that shot it, 2 las cannon shots went through, and he rolled high on damage and just one-shot it. It's like, great, sick. And then his Vindicator and his other Land Raider killed my other Vindicator, so I had no shooting in my turn by my turn 2. But I'd managed to stage quite well. Those were the only targets he could shoot. So I'd got a decent advance on my Terminator, so they were hiding in an L but couldn't be shot and had illusory. And so he had to shuffle forwards a little bit to draw lines on the Vindicators. So my turn 2, I basically got my 8-man Butchers into a Vindicator and a Land Raider. And across the 2 activations, I got the Land Raider down to 2, with some strats as well. Got the Land Raider down to 2 wounds, which I was kind of hoping to kill it, but yeah. And then I killed the Vindicator, which exploded, which is a 6-inch D3 mortal wounds explosion, which I was already like, cool, this could be good because everything was quite packed up. So that did maybe 10 mortal wounds across the unwounded Land Raider, Disco Lord, Venom Crawler, killed a couple of cultists, and crucially, the 2-wound Land Raider, it did 2 mortal wounds to that too, killing it, which then exploded as well, which is a 6-inch D6 explosion. And combined, it did about 20 more mortal wounds to his army.
Yep.
So
it happens, right?
So at the start of the fight phase, he'd had a Land Raider on about half wounds, a full strength Vindicator, another full strength Land Raider, full health Disco Lord, full health Venom Crawler, 20-odd cultists. Yeah, he was in a good spot. I'd lost all my shooting. The end of the fight phase, he had 1 Land Raider on about half health, a Disco Lord on 2 wounds, a Venom Crawler on 2 wounds, no cultists. I think 4 of the guys inside the Land Raider died getting out as well.
Oh yeah, of course, right? Yeah, just cherry on the top, right?
Yeah, so like 5 legionaries. Oh no, like 2 legionaries and like a couple of havocs or something had got out, and then my butchers just consolidated into everything.
And that's it, right? Yeah.
And then like they had illusory on them, so the swing back in his turn, he just killed like 2, I think, maybe. And then the Disco Lord was tar pitted, and because he was my Skulls target, because he had like the Gorget and stuff like that, so I assumed he was going to be really aggro with him with the Forge Fiend. And so I just held him in combat and didn't attack him, just attacked everything else with the butchers until I could bounce my demon prince over and just like kill him whenever I wanted to, basically.
Yeah, really make sure you're putting the nail in this guy's coffin. Right?
Well, yeah,
It was a
Abaddon
pretty
had
big win, right?
Yeah, it ended up 94-31. So my drop points were R&D, capped at 12, and then I dropped 3 on the long run the first turn. And that was it. Abaddon had a fairly quiet game. He failed to kill a Forge Maul of Fiends. Fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, you've a really strong opening game here. Making sure you're putting the world leaders on the map, bodying some Iron Warriors. We love to see it. It's really interesting that like you managed to fight back from this interesting situation where like a lot of your shooting is taken out early doors, and like that can be quite a worrying position to have to play from when like, not to say that you rely on your Vindicators, but they get work done throughout the game, right? So losing both of them by turn 2 is pretty significant. But then rallying back, it's all about that positioning. You know, it seems like that you had a really strong turn 3 where you just had everything in the right position and just kind of close the net and bring it all home. So yeah, you've a really strong game 1, which is you know, you jump a couple of rungs on the ladder into not quite the danger zone, I would say, because you know it's game 1. Lots of people win big, some people lose big. That's just how. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, and it was random pairings as well, at least. Of course,
yeah, exactly. Real random pairings. Yeah, strange path to victory there, but let's not dive too deep into that one. But yeah, so you have this pretty good start. You could be going into any one game 2. So who do you end up going into, Jack?
I ended up going into Thousand Suns, who I have played once since Armor of Contempt, or had played once since Armor of Contempt before this change, and I just wasn't really happy with Thousand Suns because they basically just ignore the first -2 against like the majority of my army. So
they tend to be like quite a hard counter to world leaders for the fact that our army is like quite heavily damage 1, right? Especially in close combat, like our butchers, our berserkers, blah blah blah, all the good stuff, raptors, everything, and they're able to ignore the first 2 APs of that, which is pretty big. So you're kind of hoping for your possessed to do a lot of the heavy lifting there. And then on top of all that, they have the thing that hurts us the most and the thing that counters the red butchers the hardest, which is mortal wounds everywhere, right?
Well, yeah, they also had he also had 25 rubrics for flamers. A split, like all his troops were just rubric squads with all flamers. Which is also not great for illusory.
Overwatch exists again.
And well. Overwatch, yeah.
So we were looking at that one, I remember, and like, so I got a fair bit of experience against Thousand Suns now. One of my buddies plays them a lot, and I have gone from, I would say, not really respecting the army that much to now heavily respecting them. And I would go so far as to say as they would be one of my least favorite matchups in a tournament, just because understanding the amount of like sort of uninteractive damage that they could put out that we can't really do much about, and then the fact that it takes an awful lot. Like if you start seeing things like 10 Scarab called Terminators, you're in big trouble, right? So we had a quick chat about it, and then you go into this game and run me through the game. Give me the highlights and the lowlights.
So yeah, as I say, his list was basically 25 rubrics with flamers, and then 2 blocks of 10 Scarab Cults, like fully kitted out missile launchers and cannons and stuff like that. And then like Araman and a couple of characters, including weirdly Zangor Shaman on disc.
Yeah, that was
Did
strange.
they go on discs?
They did.
Yeah, he was the action. He told me after the game he was just in for actions for like the psychic interrogate. So yeah, he took psychic interrogation, which actually worked quite well for me. He was really like keen to score it and like threw some characters away doing it. So I took a ball, obviously, because Thousand Suns. R&D again, because he was still in my head about it. And then Skulls, which I put on his. So he had 1 Exalted Sorcerer kitted out for like short range, mortal wound, bomb stuff on a disc. So I assumed he was going to chuck him forward, so I put it on that. And then promptly chucked my Demon Prince away in turn 2 when I was like, in my head, cool, hasn't got the 4-up inborn off on that brick, then teleport them anyway. And they were like my Demon Prince had a choice between like a 6-inch charge into a 10 block of Scarab Colts with Berserkers, also on like a 5 or 6 inch, and then possessed on like a 7 or 8-inch charge, all into the same brick. Or I could try like an 11-inch charge into the Skulls target. And I was like, no, No, it'd be big if I killed like 400 points for his army, and if all 3 of those units got in, I would have like picked up the unit, especially because he's only on 5-up invulns. And I was like, Demon Prince is the important one that gets in because flat 3 damage on a 5-up invuln. Give him Wild Fury, it goes like to the 5-up invuln. Sick, should kill loads. I got 8 wounds through to the save phase, so I converted literally all of my attacks. And he made 5 of 8 5-up invulns, which was really good fun.
That is what it is. Yeah, sometimes those 5-ups they just happen.
Yeah, so he then clapped back and put all of the remaining 7 Terminators into my Demon Prince and just killed him.
Yep,
obviously.
Yep. Because they're pretty respectable in combat.
It's 2 damage, and I've only got 5-up invuln, so like it's 3 up, 5 up. So, and also the possessed failed the charge, and so the berserkers ate the Overwatch. The possessed failed the charge, and then the Demon Prince went in. So I had like 1 berserker, I think, killed an extra Terminator, but it was still like 6 of them left, which was still
I mean, that's still more than enough.
Threat. Yeah, and it essentially denied me 5 victory points straight off the bat because my Demon Prince was dead.
So how do you fight back from this, I would say, unfortunate position or unfortunate moment in the game where you've kind of been caught out?
So that brick of Terminators ended up being whittled across the rest of the game, and I think the last guy only died in my turn 5.
Yeah.
But the other flank was my 8 Butchers, Apostle, and Abaddon. Pushing because sorry, the mission was Data Scry Salvage as well, the old Vital Intelligence one. Which, because he was fairly low unit count, I knew I was going to be all right if I could just push on all 4 objectives.
Data Scry Salvage is a really interesting one into Thousand Suns specifically because they just don't have the unit count to continuously do that action and dominate the midboard. They can do it for maybe 1 or 2 turns, and then they can't, right?
Yeah. So he basically, this is what I was saying earlier, he fed his Goatman Shaman.
Shaman,
that one,
the Enlightened, I want to say, I think they're called.
Maybe it was the character.
It doesn't matter. It's the dude.
The character one, to do mental interrogation on Abaddon, and it basically, because he was in a ruin with the stupid 2-inch engagement range in ruins, I could slingshot my Terminators. I got an 8-inch charge into them that was down to a 7 because of Abaddon, and then down to a 6 because of the 2-inch engagement range, and that basically let me slingshot previously untouched 8 Red Butchers with Illusory Supplication onto his home objective.
And so that's it.
Well, and then like Abaddon got into Araman and beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, Araman is not very survivable.
Disgusting amounts of damage to him.
Yeah.
And then
he's like, "Hey man, I remember you from the Heresy."
Yeah. that whole bomb just sat on his home objective for the rest of the game, and he didn't kill them. So he sent his other brick of 10 Terminators because he kept trying to teleport them away and I just kept scoring it.
Oh, it's so good, man! It's so good, and like it's so important to like get onto his home objective in that sense with your Terminators, because in this mission you have to be on it, right, to do the action. So it's huge. Yeah,
you have to control it as well.
Yeah,
so,
in terms of like the primary swing, that's like it's game winning right there, I would say.
Yeah, and then Abaddon, I think killed 8 Scarab Occult Terminators in one run of combat, which is really funny. Abaddon, he so this was like my second game was like game 10 with the new book, I think. And he hasn't really, and I've played Abaddon in every single game, and he hasn't really done that much. But into this tournament, he did start to power up a little bit, and that might be why I did quite well. But the turning point was Butch making that charge. I got the Shaman, tagged like 2 of the squads of Flamers without having to take Overwatch, and then he teleported 1 out, fell back with the other, so only 1 could shoot. And then the Scarab Occult charged me, and I overwatched him because I have Flamers in my Red Butcher squad and like killed 1 on Overwatch. And then like it's Scarab Occults versus Red Butchers. He didn't kill me, and then I just murdered him.
Yep, that'll happen.
Yeah. So, the other point is that the Vindicators, he just didn't bother shooting them because they basically didn't roll above 2 damage all game, which was
cool.
Sick.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I mean, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
But
it's a pretty.
yeah,
It sounds like you had very good like board control, and
yeah,
especially in Data Sky Salvage, that feels like what wins that game mode. And I think it might just be me, but from my experience, Data Sky Salvage is a great game for the world leaders
yeah,
because it's a game that revolves around trading up on midfield objectives for the entire game, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
you can kind of combo that with the way our army works and specific secondaries and stuff, and just really
yeah.
get the ball rolling. And typically, it's a game that I found that like I tend to lose pretty much everyone by the end of the game, but you'll just win on primary, right? And constantly
Yeah.
flipping objectives.
I mean, because I pushed one plank so hard, I ended up with quite a lot left because he sent loads of stuff over there to try and like fight the fire, but it was kind of like reactionary, so
Yeah,
it left a lot of my other stuff. So I ended up with quite a lot of stuff at the end of the game, but
yeah.
mostly because he tried to kill Abaddon and
So
didn't.
strong game too. What was the final score in this game?
Yeah, so the final score was 88-53. I don't
Yep.
think I ended up getting the last R&D. I obviously dropped 5 on skulls as well, and max support.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's
so at this point, 88 and 90, what did you say in the first one?
94.
91?
Yeah,
94.
94. Yeah.
Now you are in the danger zone, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So at this point, it's game 3, day 1.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
35 degrees.
Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah. So it's Death and Zeal, which is one of the corner cutout ones, which is traditionally one that I quite like because the deployment zone's closer. So there's a lot of opportunity for just face rolling really early on. However, I got matched into light Harlequins, which I have not had good experiences with in the past. It was basically, I think there were 4 squads of 5 troops, and then 5 players, and then 2 big squads of 11, and then like boats for all of them. 2 Shadow Seers, a Death Jester, and the really fast one, Solitaire. The one
Yeah,
that moves like fucking 30 inches or something like that.
yes, I believe
And
that
they
is the solitaire.
blitz.
Yeah,
I think
and they
it's the
blitz.
solitaire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, I don't really know what to pick secondary wise against you. Like, I can get 7 for bring it down. I can get loads for assassinate, but like, am I going to get to your characters? Skulls, whatever character I pick, you just put it in the back corner and then shoot whatever I try and get to it with. So I ended up actually using Mark Whitaker's secondaries breakdown. I've written up a little cheat sheet from his breakdown that he did a couple of weeks ago, and ended up taking the long war just because it's a default for me at this point. I know how to play that game. So as I say, generally score quite well on it. And actually, it was my last strong secondary in this game. Engage, I should not have taken engage, just because I couldn't push out fast enough against Harlequins to like reliably
Yeah, they
score
can
it.
kind of kite you and close you in a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Godrod for the Dark Gods, sorry. Just because the objectives for Death and Zeal are where you want to be doing the actions.
Yeah, they're nicely centered in the quarters. Yeah.
Yeah, like 2 birds, 1 stone kind of thing. It's a bit of a haze, this game, because it was at the end of the day where it was just stupidly hot.
Yeah.
So I did have a really good chat after the game. She was asking like, what do you think you could have done differently? Like the dream sort of like questions that you get asked, like what do you think you could have done differently? Like what kind of secondaries would you maybe have scored better on? And we agreed maybe behind enemy lines because it might have encouraged me to push out a bit faster, which was probably why I lost because I was overly scared of all the shooting, like all the pistol shooting that she had, and just how fast she was. Because I assumed if I pushed out, I would just get kited to death and not actually make contact, which is basically what happened to my Red Butchers. I don't think she interacted with them once. Didn't shoot them at all.
Yeah, with the Harlequins you can though, right? Like you can just choose to be like, cool, no problem.
Yeah.
I see that problem. It's not a problem for me because I'm far away.
Yeah. I think I wasn't aggressive enough with my berserkers either. I've only got 2 squads of 5, but I should have. They're weirdly quite good into like troops. So just because volume. But yeah, she completely ignored the butch bomb, just kited it, and then when Abaddon did make it in, which ended up being with quite a long bomb charge, like really late in the game, he did wreck face, but Yeah,
Too little, too late, right?
yeah, I was 40 points behind, and she just decided she wanted to see if she could kill Abaddon, just to say she had killed Abaddon, and did not kill Abaddon. And Abaddon ended up killing like 20 troops.
Yeah.
And that ended up actually giving me quite a big swing in my last turn. I think it was like a 20-point swing or something, which made my score a little bit more respectable than it perhaps should have been. So I ended up losing that one 66-93.
I mean, it's still quite a respectable score into the light quins, which is always a tough match. I know you said that it was what it was at the end, but I still think it's quite a respectable score.
Because like secondary wise, I only got 2 of the God Rods done, so I only scored 5. I only got engaged 1 turn for 3, and then the Long War I scored 10 on, just because, as I say, I know how to play that game, and I think it was Death and Zeal is the one where it's the same second. The mission secondary is
the Long War, basically. Yeah.
So she kept feeding like OBSEC troops onto the middle objective, but not charging the butchers. So I was just clearing them off in my turn. So she was denying me 4, but I was getting 3 back, which was obviously a good trade for her. So so it was a good fun game, and she was really good opponent, like really good player, really nice person. Yeah, just a great opponent.
So day 1 finishes, and you're 2-1, which is very respectable. So go out for a feed of pints and some food that night. It's pretty good times.
Yeah,
and then we roll into day 2. So I'll just cut here briefly, and when we come back, we'll be talking about day 2. So tune in for that next. Okay, so day 1 finishes. We go out for a bunch of food, a bunch of drinks. We have some great times with some other Chaos players, reminisce about older times, older games, and older editions. None of which Jack knows anything about because he's a 9th edition newbie, right? So we think anyways, he's outperforming all the rest of us with all our vaunted experience. Anyway, so we go into day 2, and both of us have pretty decent matchups going into this day. It's yet another power armored army for Jack, and I'm playing into guard, but we don't really care about me because I'm on the bottom tables. I'm living with the good people down down in the back of the hall. But Jack is duking it out in a good position at 2-1 into an interesting Grey Knights list, I think, to be honest.
Yeah. I hadn't really played Grey Knights since Dread Knights and stuff and Interceptors got nerfed. And back when I had played them, Wardmakers was the play for the Brotherhood, I think.
Yeah.
And this guy was running President Brethren, which I hadn't played before, basically. He had 3 Dread Knights, a load of Strike Marines, a couple of small squads of Interceptors, some Voidsmen.
The stars of the show. Yeah.
And then 5 Paladins with an Apothecary and Caldor Drago. So I was like, I wasn't too worried, but it's always those like lists that you can't really see anything obvious, where it's like this player knows what he's doing kind of thing. And
especially when they're going to be 2-1, right? You're like, yeah.
So it's like he clearly has a trick or something that I'm going to fall for, because obviously,
right.
And then he rolled appallingly for the entire game on every psychic test he ever wanted to make. Teleports, +1 to save on the Paladins, CP gen. It was. So I took a paw because I took Skulls, which I put on the Apothecary, and I took the Long War. I then went second as well, which is pretty good. We were on Tide of Conviction, which is like the overrun one with the really weird offset objectives. That's sort of like 2 diagonal lines. And
it's the big diagonals.
So I went second. So he shuffled forwards to try and get Psychic Interrogate in his first turn, which I think he did, but it also allowed my Raptors a first turn charge because I started them on the board. And I wanted to, because my plan was basically to frenzy and try and, because I was a bit worried about these tricks, I was going to just try and snipe 10 on Skulls really early. And he moved his Apothecary forwards with his Paladins because he wanted his Paladins to screen out his Psychic Interrogate character. Paladins? Might have been his Strikes, but So I tried to shoot the strikes out of the way and then charge the apothecary with my 6 raptors. 4 of the raptors got into contact with him and did 0 damage. Yeah, pop strats and everything, just 0 damage. It's great. Oh no, I think they did
Raptors,
one
man,
wound.
they're the best.
They did 1 wound that he just healed next turn. So
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah. So then the first turn charge, he was like, "Oh shit, they can move quite fast," and not realizing that they were my only jump back unit, and just ran away basically, like hid back in the corner. And because I was moving up with everything else, he could still just about get a psychic interrogate, but it meant that he wasn't threatening me shooting wise really or combat. He took the teleport secondary, where like you get 4 points if you kill something with a unit that is either deep struck or gated or teleport shunted.
Shunted, yeah.
So he was fixating on trying to score that a lot as well, and I was able to. Well, he rolled, as I say, he was rolling really badly, and I rolled well at some like key moments. Yeah, I also, just to put the boot in, did roll some pretty clutch scorns as well. So
just to make sure to kick him when he's down already, right?
But basically, because he was having to CP like a psychic test every turn, and he started on 1 as well, I think. He'd run out of CP by turn 3. Like as in he started my turn on 1 CP with the one that he gained in my command phase, and I had my entire army in charge range, and it was turn 3, so I went into slaughter.
What more do you need to say? That's already bless up moment right there.
Right. So I had 2 squads of 5 berserkers get in. I had 2 squads of 5 possessed get in. I had my demon prince get into his apothecary, and my butchers made it into his grandmaster nemesis dread knight. Abaddon. There's a story about Abaddon, but I'll save it till later. In this game, had fresh from failing to be killed by his entire army's psychic shooting combat, made it onto his home objective as well in this same turn. And I just after all the charges had gone in, I looked at him and I was like, I'm really sorry, this is going to be really brutal. And I proceeded to, so 1 squad of possessed bracketed one of his dread knights. Fine, that wasn't important. Berserkers killed 4 out of 5 interceptors on 1 flank. Abaddon did 40 damage to 5 strike marines, having shot the Voidman to death, and the other one ran away. And then the other Berserker squad killed like 6 or 7 strikes. Demon Prince lopped the head off the apothecary. The other possessed killed 4 paladins, and put the last one down to 2 wounds. The butchers only just killed the Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knight because he had the 3-up inbound power. Once again,
true, to be fair, yeah.
They, as in, I think they did something like 17 damage across both activations, and that was with some strats, which was alarming. But basically, I maxed the paw in 1 fight phase. I also got 15 on skulls because I killed his apothecary with my demon prince, and I also got 3 on the long war because I flipped multiple objectives. And then also got 2 on overrun for holding his objective, and also denied him any primary for the rest of the game. It was a pretty big turn.
A swing turn, I think they call that in the business. Yeah.
The insult to injury was Khaldor Drago had heroic into my demon prince, and my demon prince survived that experience, and then in his turn killed Khaldor Drago. Which was just rough. Sorry about that.
There was a lot of sorry about that one moments in that. The
demon prince actually, so to the apothecary, did 24 damage to him, pre-shrugs, and then he made a couple of shrugs, but not 24. So yeah, it was quite a vicious turn, and he was just like, yeah, this is pretty much it at this point. The final score for that game was 92-37. The 8 I dropped was on the long war because I killed it too fast, basically.
Yeah, you killed it too. That is a pretty savage. That's brutal. Yeah.
So
You were done that game fast because you came over to my table and I was in turn 3.
yeah, well, so my first couple of turns were really cagey. I basically hid and waited for him to move up because he needed to attack me to score his teleport assault, and also he needed to move forwards to get Psychic Interrogate. So I basically just plinked shots with Vindicators wherever I could, and then they didn't really do much, but the threat was there. And then he just moved forwards a bit, and so it ended when turn 3 came, and I was like, oh, you've only got 1 CP left.
Oh no!
Another fairly key point in that was I sent Abaddon off on his own to do Abaddon things, and he decided in his turn 3 that he was going to try and kill Abaddon, which for Grey Knights very possible to do in 1 turn.
Yeah,
because you've got the psychic, you've got a decent amount of shooting, and you've got the combat. And his smite only did 2 wounds, I think. And it was the only one that went off because his psychic tests were just not going off. And so he ended up on he ended up he was slightly off kilter with the wound brackets, with the face cap. So he had teleported the librarian in, and then charged him with the librarian and 5 interceptors, but started with, and Abaddon obviously has fight first, but so he started with the librarian to try and do those last 2 wounds to Abaddon to kill him. Which the librarian's weapon wasn't that good. He did it purely to try and get the 4 points. If he'd done it with the interceptors, Abaddon would have died, almost certainly, because he'd already popped his ignore the first failed save against shooting. And so Abaddon, with his free interrupt, basically turned around, murdered the librarian, murdered all the interceptors, and then consolidated towards his home objective, which set him up for that 3rd turn charge onto his home, and which
Abaddon doing Abaddon things, it's what the big man does. So very impressive and comprehensive victory in game 4 at this point. So now you're really in the danger zone. You're 3-1. At this point, you're going to be playing people who are, really close to the top. Not no one's going to be winning the tournament, but it's people who are going to be fighting for those top 20, top 30 positions, which is a lot of really scary lists. And so what was it? We were outside, sitting on the grass. I was worried about missing my train and my flight home, and you just wanted a nice game to cap off the weekends.
Yeah.
And I recall we were sitting on the grass and we said, okay, there's 3 armies we don't want to play. And those armies are Necrons, Sisters, and Tau. And what did we draw, Jack?
Well, I believe you got a lovely Sisters list, and then I got a 2 Crisis Bomb Tau list with a load of flamers.
I would debate as to whether or not my Sisters list was lovely. The opponent was lovely, and I had the best game of 40k in a tournament that I've ever had, but the list was brutal. But yeah, so we both ended up playing the list that we didn't want to play. Sucks to suck, I guess. But so you're going into a filthy Tau list. We scrambled, I think, to try and work out what secondaries to take, what you're going to do. And I remember leaving you being like, this is going to be a bad final round for both of us here.
Yeah.
And you sent me a message, right? After, was it deployment or turn 1? And you were like,
I don't think we'd even got into turn 1. I was just like, I don't know. So his list was basically, it was secure missing artifacts, so the move the objectives one. And then his list was so he had 1 Crisis Bomb with all the drones and shit and just flamers everywhere. And another Crisis Bomb, which was more mixed, had the ion blasters, the plasma rifles, the missile pods, I think. And there were a couple of burst cannons peppered in. And then there was a Hammerhead, which I've never played before, a Long Strike, the named Ethereal, Ornvar, I think, the one that gets 3 rounds instead of 2 or something like that. A couple of broadsides, and then 3 big crisis teams, not crisis teams, strike teams. They're basic infantry, and then some crew hounds as well, actually. So I took no prisoners because the broadsides are 8 wounds each and count towards it, and it's cool.
Cool. That's almost a point for each broadside at that point.
And each of the crisis bombs is 20 wounds.
Easy take.
It just felt like a no-brainer as well, because the long war, he probably wasn't going to be moving on to objectives and stuff. So
For sure, yeah.
Skulls as well. Again, for lack of better options, and I want to make it work. So, and then R&D.
Because I was still in your head.
Still in my head. Yeah, like, I'll be honest, it wasn't the best game. I rocked up to the table and just didn't get. It just wasn't good vibes from the start. Like it was hot and sweaty, and I was like knackered, and I just wanted an easy game, and I don't like playing Tower basically. Was part of it, and then so I gave him like benefit of the doubt, and then we as we got into the game a bit, we started to like build the rapport that you do naturally build through a game normally, in like with most opponents. And I was just like, cool, it's just the end of a long weekend. We just took a little bit of time to like gel, because we're socially awkward, sweaty Warhammer nerds, so it takes some time sometimes. So I was like, cool, this might actually be all right. I was still like, I'm probably going to lose, but it'll be an all right game as long as I like have fun. I don't really mind about losing. I'd won my 3 games, which is all I tend to want to do. So in turn 3, he had bounced his Enforcer commander, which was my Skulls target, out onto an objective on his own, and said, I need to do it because he needed to. What was it? It was his pressure. It was his priority target.
Priority targets,
yeah. So he needed to get it for his 3 points, and I was like, that's your Skulls target, right? My Skulls target, right? Because my Demon Prince was like, where he'd moved him to, my Demon Prince was like.
It was threat range.
15 inches away. Like it was not even threat range. It was like he's going to charge you.
Yeah, it's happening.
There's no doubt about it. And then, so I'd finished he did that, and it was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, he was like, I need to do it to get the 3 points. And then said something like, I don't even need to win. I've got my 3 wins, and I'm happy with that. And I was like, yeah, no, man, that's fair. Like, okay, it's whatever makes the game quicker, so we can get aircon. And so I was then doing the rest of my movement with my, at that point, quite limited resources, and had my Demon Prince right in front of the Enforcer, and said, how many wins has he got? And he was like 7, I think it was 7. And I was like, cool, I only need like a couple, like 2 to go. I think he was wounded, so he was on 6. And I was like, cool, I only need two wounds to go through. And at that point, he was like, yeah, he's got a 5-up shrug as well. And I was like, oh, cool, yeah, I remember you saying something. Because at the start of the game, I'd asked him on all of his characters, having picked Skulls, what's the defensive profile on all these characters, trying to work out which was the easiest to kill. I was probably going to pick the commander anyway, because he pushed forward. He was probably going to be the one to push forwards a bit. I may have picked Long Strike if I'd known the commander's full rules. So he basically said he's got a 5-up shrug. That's one of his traits or something. And I was like, cool, yeah, I remember you saying about that. I had forgotten about it, but you did tell me about it. And then he also said, oh, and he's also -1 damage. And I was like, you haven't mentioned that yet. Like,
cool, yeah, nice.
That's quite a big thing to leave out. Especially because I had at that point gotten into his hammerhead and long strike, and had prioritized the hammerheads just because it was shorter charges. But like I could have got into long strike at that point, and I like had I known about the -1 damage, I might have picked long strike. So he was like,
yeah.
I mean, you can redo your movement phase if you want, because I had a squad of possessed around that I sent off to do something else, thinking Demon Prince will kill him easy. Even with a 5-up shrug, I reckon Demon Prince will kill him with some strats. And I was like, no, it's fine, because I was kind of like, okay, guess I've lost then. Like,
yeah, it's a shit feeling though, you know.
Yeah, like I know gotchas aren't like illegal, but it just like.
Yeah, well, if you ask someone like, what's the defensive profile on this guy, and he leaves out part of the defensive profile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, so I like maybe I should check the data sheet myself. I check the data sheets on most things, but obviously it's a skim between rounds rather than like I know this army really well kind of thing. And like because like end of a long weekend, maybe it was like a genuine mistake. Forgot to tell me. Didn't realize. Forgot his rules. I don't know. He's 3 and 1.
Yeah.
Whatever happened. My DP went in and failed to do. He did one wound basically. So I rolled low as well, but he did one wound to the commander, and I was just like, cool. And it just changed. Yeah, the
Vibe
vibe
was
the
bad.
vibe which had been building back up was just like dead.
Rock bottom. Yeah.
Dead. Yeah. Like, I was just like, yeah. The other part was like, because we talked about gotchas at the start. Like at the start of the game, I would tend to say like, by the way, I can do 6-inch consolidates. If it goes on the butchers, they can go really far in the combat phase. And also, I've got a 9-inch pre-game move. Like on fast units means I can get a very short turn on charge. Like, because I don't want to gotcha people, right? Because it feels bad for whoever's on the receiving end. And he'd agreed with me and said, yeah, no, that's really shitty. I hate people who do that. And then it's like, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, I was like, cool, I've lost the game, and basically just aimed everything at like finishing the game as quick as possible at that point, because I was like, I just want to go home now. I did later manage to snipe the commander with 3 possessed. I just ran round a crisis bomb and charged him and killed him with some possessed. But as I say, I was pretty done with the game. My competitive spirit was like, I'll try and score as many points, but I'm not gonna like devote too much more brain power to this. Because I was also looking ahead to my 5-hour drive home in 35 degrees, which was
not the best.
So we got to the end of the game. My last turn, my Dark Apostle for the first time in the tournament had made combat. I held it. I took an objective off a crisis bomb with a Vindicator and a Dark Apostle, which was pretty funny. And then the Apostle used the 2-inch engagement range jank to charge another crisis bomb through a wall for a 6-inch charge without getting Overwatch, and killed like 6 drones, which put me over for another point on no prisoners, which is good and will become important later. So in his last turn, he fell back out of combat, but the successful charge from the Apostle meant that he couldn't fall back and do his last Nephilim, which denied him 4 points. He then shot 10 cultists with 3 crisis suits that had burst cannons, and killed 7 of 10, which was already quite funny. I obviously failed morale, so another one ran, and then the last 2 stuck around, which was, I was like, cool, sure, doesn't really change anything, because he went second, so he was scoring at the end of the turn anyway, and I was like, sure. But when we came, because we both took no prisoners in the game, when we came to tally up, I'd scored 7 on no prisoners. I'd scored like 65 on the tally, +1 for getting over 50. And we tallied up his army, his kills, and those last 2 cultists being alive still meant that he had scored 98 on no prisoners, which meant that he got 10. If he'd killed those last 2 cultists or they'd run away, he would have got 12. The final score was 80-79 to me, which
Big
was
swing. Big swing.
Really, really funny to me.
I think it was very funny to me as well.
Because I'd been messaging you like, I think I messaged you like, I'm really tilted when the -1 damage thing came up.
I remember because I could see you from where I was, and I looked over, and you just like had your hands like this, and you were just like looking up at the sky, and I was like, "No, Jack, no!"
Like, and then I came over because you were packing up with your opponent when I came over. I think because mine went quite long, and just like clapped you on the back with a massive grin, and you were like, "Did you do it?" So that was quite fun.
I was so there for it, dude. I was so happy to hear that you'd taken that one, because it was like, I mean, look, let's be real. It was a dirty game, right? It was not a clean game of Warhammer, and it's not how you want to end the weekend. No. And you won by 1 point in a very satisfying way, because your cultists didn't run to morale, even though they had no right living. But it's always things like that I'm like, cool, that's even more satisfying, because you got insanely lucky, and he's obviously going to be a little bit pissed about that. But he should have been more clear with everything, and like, obviously, you weren't having an amazing game and all that sort of stuff, and just like a couple of things threw the vibe off, and it's kind of like, oh, karma, like, it swings around, right? So you finished that game winning by a single point, which
Yeah,
puts you to the big 4-1
yeah.
for world
And
leaders at a big major.
so technically, it was a super major because of that's the reason they do the top cut at the Warhammer tournaments events, so that they
Oh,
go
okay,
7 rounds and can call it a super major if it gets bigger.
okay. So was it a super major in the end?
It was technically a super
Oh
major.
hell yeah! Okay, sweet. My first super major. Let's go. So 4-1 at a super major, no less.
Yeah,
I think it's fair to say that we all bow down and worship Jack, king of the world leaders, the world leader
I'm,
king.
I'm not. I'm third now. I think
You're
I'm still
getting there. You're getting
behind
there.
Mark and behind Ben.
You're getting there. We've got Coventry. We'll squeeze in a couple of other things before the season runs out. A couple of RTTs that you're going to go bully some kids at. But yeah,
Not
so
registered.
finishing 4-1, like, how did you? Obviously, initially, your feelings weren't great because you had a really rough final game, right? So,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily reflective of your overall performance at the event and how you feel about it. But having time to kind of come down from that now, taking a week to think about everything, how do you feel about your performance? Like, were you happy with how you did? Not necessarily the list. We're going to talk about that in another video, but like, were you pleased with how it went?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think we're quite similar in that I do tend to fixate over like little mistakes that I make, especially when I can like definitively attribute like points that I missed or points that I gave away. And like no, I think like aside from secondary selection in the Harlequins game, but then we talked about it and like I talked about it with my opponent and I talked about it with you. I'm not sure what better secondaries there were for that game because I said to her like if I picked skulls, whatever character I would have picked, you would have just back corner, not
Yeah.
getting that. So aside from secondary selection, I think engage was bad, but I'm not sure. Like behind enemy lines maybe, but I'm not sure what else I would have picked. And aside from yeah, no, I think that's probably it. I think everything else was like the logic behind the decision making was sound. It was just some bad rolling at key points that like yeah. No,
Yeah, I get you.
I think I'm relatively happy with my performance. I think what I'm most impressed with was that I managed to retain brain function for the whole weekend.
Yeah, it
Drinking
was tough.
9 liters of water a day in like
Yeah,
35 degrees with 200 people in a sports hall. It
I
was
feel that it was not the most fun. I'm going to
trial.
attribute my losses to that, right? We can call it that and just and leave it at that one. But yeah, so I think you did fantastic for what it's worth. I think it's very admirable seeing a World Leaders player do this well with the new book at such a high profile event, such a large player base. And your path to victory was very admirable. Like you played quite good armies for pretty much everything. Armies that tend to sometimes counter really well into us as well, like beating Tau, beating Grey Knights, and beating Thousand Suns. That's quite impressive.
Mm.
So that was really cool, I think. And I think overall, yeah, it was really fun weekend for us, and it was great to hang out with you as well, and just chat shit, talk secondaries, blah blah blah, have
Yeah.
a good time. So the weekend finished 4-1 for Jack. And what position were you? You were 20 something,
24th out of 212.
24th,
Yeah,
which is seriously good. So that is more or less it for this video, folks. Jack's rundown of the Leeds GT. We're going to have another video where we talk about Jack's list, about kind of how he feels it's been doing and, certain directions it might be going, things that are changing, things that are staying the same, the top units, the worst units. So we're going to have that coming up pretty soon as well. But yeah, so everyone give some love down in the comments below for Jack and his fantastic performance. And I'm sure we're going to be seeing him here again after the big Coventry Super Major where we're going to duke it out. And this time I'll do better than you, dude.
I will hold you to that.
But yeah, do you have anything to say before we close this one out, Jack?
No, I always love being on here. And Leeds was really fun, if a little sweaty.
Just a little. Yeah.
Just a little.
So that's going to be it for this one, folks. Y'all stay healthy, stay safe, and kill, maim, burn.